Well, hello, and a very warm welcome back to the Andrew Eborn Show with me, Andrew Eborn, and who else? Well, I'll tell you who else. It's my good friend down in South Africa, Errol Musk. How are you doing, Errol?
I'm okay, thank you. And you?
Hey, not too bad, surviving. Well, this time last week, we were witnessing the inauguration of Trump. We were doing a commentary for broadcast, you and I. Since then, the media has burst a blood vessel about the celebration that Elon did, his controversy over the inauguration gesture. He placed his right hand on his chest, then extended his arm forward while speaking at the Donald Trump's inauguration at the Capital One Arena. He said, "This is what victory feels like. Thank you for making it happen." Since then, the media's gone crazy, saying it's all to do with a Nazi salute. What's your take on that?
Well, I saw that Elon is not comfortable on stage. He's still getting used to, self-consciousness and trying to get through something as quickly as possible. And he will get there. It takes a bit of time. So what you saw was a bit of exuberance and, trying to, get it done. I mean, in times gone by, I remember when I had to try and start doing that stuff, I'd write even notes. And my mind would go blank, and I'd look at the notes. I couldn't read, I couldn't do anything. And then I'd try and stumble along, and then afterwards, people would say to me, "That was good," and I'd say, "Really?" You know, you know. But no, that wasn't a Nazi salute. I mean, afterwards, I had people sending me about 10 or 12 pictures of Obama, Hillary, what's her name? AOC, Nancy Pelosi, and Don, all doing the same thing. The
Yeah,
same.
and I see that, and Elon's. I mean, he's talked about that and so on and so forth. But it meant that
But,
the media starts speculating about his upbringing. There's an article in the Guardian. I don't know if you've seen it, but they talk about how the roots of the PayPal mafia extend to apartheid South Africa, and they talk about Elon and how he grew up in South Africa and those sort of influences. And I thought what I love about our chats, Errol, is that we can put right all these misrepresentations in the media. You obviously know him better than anybody about the growing up on
sure.
those sort of side. Talk to me about those sort of days because they talk about his grandfather on the maternal side, and his grandfather obviously died. I just Elon was only 3 years old when his grandfather died, didn't he?
Actually, it was 1 year old.
1 year old.
Yeah. And yeah. No, he never knew the grandfather. The grandfather was of a different type of generation, you could say, born in 1900 and went through the Depression in America and all that sort of stuff. And, was uh, part of a sort of bit of an odd sort of crowd. He came to South Africa, because he favored the idea of separate development and apartheid and so on. He liked the idea. And, he was, yeah, the boys don't like me to talk about it. So, but the thing is that Elon had nothing whatsoever to do with him. So, Elon's influence is from me, where I stood, where the focus should be is I stood against the ruling Nationalist Party that supported apartheid. I stood against them twice for Parliament, for the party that was proposing to abolish apartheid, for which I was spat on, screamed at, threatened with death, and in fact, not only threatened with death, but through wiretapping, we caught the people who were threatening me with death, and so on. And of course, my children were threatened with death. So, yeah, they should focus more on that. But of course, that's not what they're there for. And, their object is to tear down everything that's worth having, and then afterwards ask us to rebuild it for them so that they can tear it down again.
Yeah.
You know, useless
And
people.
that's why I think, Errol, I mean, it's so unfair what the media have done because they've
Well,
twisted that, and that's why I thought it's good to put that into perspective. It's a, talk to me about because it's Joshua Haldeman. Is that how you pronounce his name? Joshua Haldeman. He
Norman
was
Holman.
May's father. He moved to South Africa due to support for apartheid and Christian nationalism and fascist undertones, is how it's been reported. Very different. They also say that you didn't speak to them for a long while because of their very strong views, which you disagreed. Is that
Yeah,
right?
I didn't get on with them. I didn't like what they did, and they wouldn't tolerate any other opinion than theirs. So it made it difficult for me. And, so I never got on with them at all. In fact, it was difficult because I actually more or less tore their daughter away from them. And she's now sort of gone back to them after the divorce, you could say, and opposed to me. But I couldn't handle their stuff. It was unpleasant to me.
Yeah, and I think this is why it's so important to put it in perspective, because you and I have spoken about this beforehand. You were a very young politician in your 20s. You stood up against apartheid. You were one of the first, and it's you got all sorts of personal issues as a result, with people threatening, as you say, threatening your life.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yes, absolutely. I mean, the threats against me came when I stood for Parliament. For the what was called the PFP party, which was aiming at creating a black government. And I wasn't absolutely enamored by the PFP, but they asked me to stand for them, and I stood for them. I didn't like apartheid. I thought it was a pointless sort of thing, and I still stand for proper balanced government. We don't have that in South Africa. So, as I've said to the government here, they need to include white people. I mean, you can't just go one way and then go the other way, and think that's all right. So, there's no white person in government here. It's terrible. In June, there was a sort of attempt to include a couple of opposition people in the government in somewhat weak portfolios, but in reality, we have a government here that's non-functioning. We don't have government departments that function. They never have. We don't have an airline. We don't have a railway system. We don't have a post office. We don't have a home affairs department. You name it. We don't have it. We don't have a medical, a health affairs department. We don't have anything in this country. They just don't exist.
Yeah, and it's so worth calling out. And this is what we always say. I always say that our only mistress is the truth. And I think it's people don't bother to sort of do their research properly, don't bother to actually check things out. And this is the other thing. So what they also say in the article, they say Elon's current promotion of what they call far right ideologies and conspiracy theories reflects the echoes of apartheid era thinking. Is that a fair summary?
No, what did you say? Echoes.
So this is what they say. It reflects echoes of apartheid era thinking. That's why they're saying Elon's current promotion.
No. Elon and Kimball were boys at that time, boys, and somewhat, living in a pleasant life in a fine home. They didn't really have much problem. They were really friendly with their schools that they went to. Had quite a few children of different races. And they befriended them, and they often came over to us and stayed the weekend. And Indians, some were some were black, and some were whatever. And so we never had any problem with any of that kind of thing. Nothing. Yeah. Boys, we never discussed it really.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to put that into context. I saw an interview fairly recently with Kimball, who talked about Elon and having difficulties at school. He was beaten up quite badly at school and bullied a lot. Is that right?
No. On one occasion, when Elon was in grade 8, 13 years old or something, another kid in the school, this was a school in a high school. We used the government schools a lot in South Africa because they were very good. And as they used to be in England, the old grammar schools and things. Anyway, we... what was I going to say? I had a school that it was in a very upmarket area, but it drew its children from all over. And anyway, one child in particular, as it happened, as the headmaster of the school explained to me, this child's father committed suicide. And so apparently the child somehow had the experience of hands-on experience of that. And so when he came to school, people were talking about it, and Elon, had this inclination to say to people in his sort of wisdom, he sort of always had this wisdom, your father was stupid, which is probably accurate, but not actually something you want to do. And this kid was incensed, and when Elon wasn't looking, during the break period, he pushed Elon down a flight of stairs. But it was 2 flights of stairs, went down 2 levels from second level to the ground. And it was long, straight concrete staircase. And Elon was severely hurt. So he was 10 days in hospital. But that's the only thing that ever happened. After that, I thought of taking the case to the police. But when I saw the circumstances and this other little boy was half Elon's size, crying and weeping and everything, and when the headmaster told me the story, I just said, look, let's just take Elon out of the school and Kimball and put them in another school. So I put them in Pretoria Boys High, which required me to buy a house in Pretoria, which was in another city. We were in Sandton at the time, and which is part of Johannesburg. And we moved. So, and there were no problems after that. And the headmaster of Pretoria Boys High even wrote a long letter to the press saying that bullying of the kind that is being suggested doesn't exist at Pretoria Boys High School. At the same time, boys, like in any place, certainly in South Africa, are forever teasing each other and, doing measuring contests, to see who's got the biggest biceps and all that sort of stuff. It's normal. And so you've always got kids at each other, boys at each other, but bullying where you've got one particular huge, monstrous boy who picks on some little, soft little kid. No, it's not the case. Not happening.
Yeah, and the other thing Kimball talks about is South Africa during those times. It wasn't unusual, he was saying. He remembers one particular train journey where there was a gang fight broke out, and he basically had to step over a dead body.
Yes, that's... Look, last week, my lady, Yana, that we have 2 small children with, she went to draw some money at an ATM in the town right here. And she got into the car, and this male climbed into the car on the other side and put a 10-inch knife into her side. And she tried to resist. She had her thumb cut open and the nail taken off her finger, one finger. She's very lucky, actually. And but this character and his sidekick got away with all those things. Ripped her ring off and ripped her watch off and all the money she had and her handbag and ID and all that sort of stuff, all gone. And she was in bandages for a few days. She's better now, but that was last Tuesday, I think. And so, that kind of thing is pretty normal here. You get a lot of that kind of thing here. Over a typical weekend here in Cape Town, we don't even mention it. In the US, it's national news. But I imagine if you look at the headlines, you'll probably find that 10 people were shot dead in Cape Town over the weekend. That's yesterday and the day before. So I'm just guessing. I did that once, and I said to somebody, in Cape Town, you'll find 10 people were killed over the weekend. So we had a look at the news. It was 93 people that were shot dead in Cape Town over the weekend. So this is South Africa. I go around armed. You have to be armed, and so for Kimmel, something across stuff like that, it's not unlikely. However, I once took a train from Manhattan, downtown Manhattan, to JFK, and on the way, which takes a long way and it goes through various towns, 2 blacks got into the what do you call it, cabin, or what do you call it?
Yeah.
Train cabin.
Carriage.
And
yes.
Started fighting. Unfortunately, I was with my 6-year-old daughter. She was 6 years old at the time. I was sitting way up at the one end, but these 2 were at each other, and blood and hitting, and they were heading our way. And I started then they were huge characters. I thought, I'm going to have to step in here, and when the train stops again, I'm going to, when the doors open, I'm going to throw them out. That's what I contemplated doing, because I wasn't going to let my daughter suffer that, from them, because they were falling over people and all that kind of thing. That was in New York. Yeah. So these are problems all the time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I have a few friends in South Africa. I mean, basically, they say that they never stop at traffic lights because they're worried about carjacking and things like that. It's but Elon,
yes, terrible.
Yeah. And it's like as and the first time I went down there, you sort of lock yourself into the hotel room just to feel safe. Interesting. They say that Elon left South Africa in 1988 to avoid mandatory military service. Was that the reason?
No, no, no. We never discussed military service. He was in any case going to go to university, which would have deferred his military service by a further 4 years. So we never discussed it. I knew about military service, of course. I'd been in the military myself for a long time, actually finishing up as the OC of a regiment or squadron, as we called it at that time. And so, we never discussed it. Never discussed it. Later on, they said they left to avoid military service. No, that's just something they made up. It sounds good, That's all.
Yeah.
Just
Oh, no.
sounds good.
I say that's the great thing about these conversations. If anybody would know, it's the father who brought him up. So exactly what
No, I
happens.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the relationship then with Peter Thiel, because he's a name that comes up all the time as well. He lived in a German influenced town where Nazism was still openly venerated, is what they're saying. And he attended a German language schools in Namibia, instilling dislike of regimentation that influenced his libertarian views, is what they say in this article. He's got quite a controversial figure, allegedly defended apartheid as economically sound during his college years and criticized welfare programs and women voting. What do you know about Peter Thiel?
Well, he was with Elon in PayPal,
PayPal, yeah.
and at the time, Peter Thiel acted against Elon in PayPal in having Elon evicted as CEO when Elon was on honeymoon in Europe for 2 weeks. He came back to find he's no longer the CEO of PayPal, but they were at odds with each other. Elon envisaged a company that would become worth billions and billions, whereas these people couldn't really see that. And so, they were not close, and I have seen about him subsequently. I know that he provided the angel capital for Facebook and so forth. And he's obviously a very smart guy. And I do remember Elon once said to me that he enjoys a game of chess with Peter Thiel because Peter Thiel's quite good at chess. And otherwise, not much. I know that I read that he threw his weight behind Trump. I read that he grew up in Sokobunt near in South Africa. And that's all I know about him. I would imagine he's a colorful guy. I would think he's all right,
But it doesn't necessarily mean that Elon supports his views.
No. Elon is a dead center sort of guy. Elon is the guy who could call the common sense man,
Right.
I mean, because he learned that from me throughout our lives together. We proceed on the basis of common sense. I tell you what, common sense takes you a long way in life,
Oh, absolutely. Well, the thing about common sense is not so common.
Yes, but it's unfortunately that's true. But in my career as a young man, as an engineer, I found that having fixed ideas and unbending, the principles or some crap like that, didn't get you anywhere. Common sense got you a long way, a hell of a long way. And, the old maxims, common sense and side with the management, side with the management and common sense, and that's Elon. So there's no way he has any crazy, neither of my sons, they're terrible, and my daughters, terribly balanced individuals, so much so that even if I come up with some ace of an argument of my own, they'll say to me, "Come on, Dad, get off your high horse, stop your crap." I say, "All right."
It's good to see. Well, let me quote you some of the article because it talks about you, Errol, as well. And there's lots of things, knowing you in the way that I've got to know you over the several conversations that we had, it didn't ring true, but I thought it's good. This is what the Guardian article says. It said, well, first of all, I'm sure there's some factual things. Errol Musk opposed apartheid and initially joined the Progressive Federal Party, but left due to its support for one person, one vote. Is that right?
I left the PFP.
You left the party because of the support for one person,
one vote. No, I never left the party at all. I never left the party. I don't remember actually sort of going and joining the party, but I mean, I was taken in by the leader of the party, the various leaders. They just presumed I would. I was at university. I was a director of NewsAS, which is the sort of forerunner of the Progressive Party at university level. And I was a director. I was one of the directors of NewsAS, and I had my arguments at NewsAS because I applied common sense. You know, they wanted, you know, all the white people shot, and there were white people calling for the white people to be shot and destroyed and all that sort of stuff. And I would say, as a student, I'd say, no, that's not very clever. You know, we must do this and this. And as a result, sometimes at university level, I was criticized and called not a Nazi, something else. I don't know, something else. And, or some sort of, you know, stupid person. But anyway, no, then I went on, and I found that, you know, the kind of people I worked with in the world I was in were purely business orientated. So I had very little difficulty there. One of the things that did happen to me is I started life working for a firm of British consulting engineers, and they were given the job of refurbishing the electrical system of the Victoria Central Prison, which they made a terrible cock-up of, and were told that they must leave or they're going to be prosecuted or something to that effect. So that they treated South Africa, they were doing the Sydney Opera House. You know, South Africa for them was a nothing. And they were very Lani people. You know, you always felt a bit uncomfortable in the presence of the partners because, you know, they were so better than now, you know, sort of thing all the time. But better than me, I mean. But at any rate, and they were very impressive. I mean, it was very impressive to see these guys with their pinstripe suits like you, and their flowers in the lapel and all that sort of stuff, you know, and talking like that. Anyway, but yeah, this firm left, and then I happened, with the older man in the practice, took over, actually purchased their library for in today's money about £1 million. And I mean, when I think of it, I don't know how I did it. But anyway, or maybe not £1 million, maybe £100,000. I'm not sure. But anyway, what was I going to say? After that, I worked mostly with. Oh yes, I was going to say that I was employed by the prisons department to take over that job. They had seen that I'd been working on it, and they suggested that would I be prepared for the public works department to continue that work and straighten it out. And of course, I knew the director, and they liked me, and I was a young guy full of beans. And I said, sure. And so I spent a lot of time there, and then I was appointed as a permanent consultant, you know, to my credit or discredit, to the prisons department, which only ended in 1989,
right,
when South Africa changed direction. So I was a permanent consultant to the prisons department for 19 years, from 1970 to 1989. That's incredible. And so I went to every single meeting of the prisons department head office of the main generals and everything. And I was party to many of the pretty awful things that I heard and experienced during that time, which, you know, these things happen and you wish you weren't part of that. But unfortunately, these things happen, and I saw these things. I saw terrible things. And particularly the execution of so many people, you know, and you know, really terrible situations. And yeah, so otherwise I was more or less out of that. So when the PFP, the progressives, came along to me and said, would you like to, I like the word progressives. It's a word that I think is good. The sort of lefties or somewhat nutcases came to me and said, do you want to stand for parliament? I said, yeah, sure, I can't do it. That makes sense to me. So I stood. I lost the first election in Arcadia. Then the next election was for Sunnyside, also in Pretoria. I lost that election. But I had the oddest thing happen in the second election. At a point at that time, in around 81, the Nationalist Party, which was the apartheid party, split between those who were more enlightened, so-called, and those who wanted to stick to the old ways. So those who stuck to the old ways were called the Reformed Nationalist Party, or the HNP, and they separated from the NP. And they were now going to insist that South Africa remain steadfast on a path of separate development and apartheid, you see. whereas the National Party was trying to find a solution to South Africa, you see. But when I had that election in 81, I think it was 81, and in Sunnyside, at about 6 o'clock in the evening, it was probably February or so there's a bit of light still, and along came a motorcade of cars, and out got the head of the HNP, the head of the Reformed National Party, the ones who were into keeping apartheid, you know. And he got out of his car and he greeted everybody, and the press, of course, were flashing their cameras. And Willie Murray, he was well known, and I think he was a doctor and everything. He was quite an educated guy. And then he stood on a plinth and he said, "I am here to vote once in my life for the Progressive Party. And this is the first and the last time I'll ever be voting for the Progressive Party. Because I'm not voting for the Progressive Party, I'm voting for the man. And that man is Errol Musk," which is rather nice.
Yes.
If you know what I mean. I didn't really know him or anything, but off he went then. You know, he voted for me and then out he came. It's pretty weird, you know. And as I say, I didn't really know him or anything, but he seemed to think I had a better head on my shoulders than the opposing Nationalist Party candidate.
Right. No, fantastic, and exactly, and it's so important to say that, because I always say that if you don't read the newspapers, you're ill-informed. If you read them, you're misinformed, and that's what I love, is that we get the real unpacking. The story goes on, as I say, this is the Guardian, and this is why it's so important to emphasize this. It says that you described May's parents as very fanatical in favor of apartheid. We touched on that, stating they supported Hitler and sympathized with the Afrikaner government. You eventually stopped visiting them due to their extreme views. They go on to talk about your relationship with the family. They got the age wrong when Elon was 1 year old, you say, not 3 years old. That's what they say in the article. But Elon remained close to his mother and grandmother. It goes on to say Elon is estranged from Errol Musk, who he's described as abusive. And May Musk has also accused Errol of abuse towards her children and her, and once claimed he shot and killed 3 intruders in self-defense, or he's spoken about that. They then quote again this article from Rolling Stone in 2017 saying that Errol is a terrible human being. Almost every evil thing you could possibly think of, he has done. What's your answer to that?
Oh, I didn't know I'd done them all. No, I don't know. I saw that. The Rolling Stone contacted me and asked me for my comments. I said, well, I don't know. I've never done anything to harm anybody that I know of, not deliberately anyway. And, you know, I don't know where they were coming from. I mean, there was a time when, as I said, the boys had to distance themselves from anything that connected them to South Africa, apartheid, or anything of that nature, I suppose. I don't know. So they were trying to, I don't know, lift themselves into the world of the Democrats. I don't know, I have no clue. I asked them, well, why are you saying this? And anyway, so this abusiveness, I mean, my kids were so well looked after. They've never had a hand raised to them. None of my kids have even ever had a hand raised to them. I punished them by saying, instead of getting 2 sweets, you're only getting 1. Right. And they go, oh no, oh please, you know. Strangely enough, it works. But at any rate, so they, you know, I recently, a while back, I saw this stuff from May, you know, saying how I abused her and everything. So I thought, you know, this is really weird. What's going on? Because for 45, we've been divorced for 45 years. For 40 years, she never said anything.
Right.
And now suddenly she comes up with us. And we've had many functions when we've been together. And we sometimes had dinner and lunch together after we were divorced. She even came to see me about 2.5 years after we were divorced to ask me if I don't want to remarry. And I said, no, I don't. I don't think it's worth it. You know, and she said, oh, right, and she left. So it's really odd. But anyway, so to clear the air, I thought, well, I'll get a hold of someone. I remembered my partner that I had from about 75 to 81. He was a business partner of mine. We did property development. He was a business administration manager, but he was very good at putting together property deals. And so the two of us, instead of me just designing buildings, I started looking for sites where we put up buildings, you see, and find investors. You know the story. And so the two of us did that quite successfully for about 6 years, very successfully. Put up about 10 little shopping centers and various. And he even used the money we made to immigrate, to leave South Africa, because he wanted to live in America. And so he left in about 81, 82. And his name was Irving Jacobson. So he'd been with me for years. And May used to come to my practice every day, more or less every day. She'd come at about 10 in the morning. She got on really good with all the girls. We had a lot of girls there. And we'd have lunch together. And the three of us, Irving and May and I, would have lunch quite often together, 3 or 4 times a week, 3 times a week at least. We'd also go out on weekends because Irving and I haven't seen Irving for 25 years, but we still talk on the phone as though we never separated. You know what I mean? We don't have to get into who are you again sort of stuff. And so I got hold of Irving a while back, and I said to him, Irving, this is what May's saying. What do you think? He said, leave it to me. I'll write a letter to your children. So he wrote this letter to the children in which he introduced himself and explained how he knows us and so forth, and how much time he spent with us, and how he was more or less with me more or less every day in the week, and certainly sometimes on weekends with his wife. And May was often with us, and he said that there was never any signs of abuse or verbal or physical or any of that nature. He said, in fact, quite the opposite. May wanted to be with Errol in everything that he did. I don't know how you can say more than that. That's enough. May wanted to be with Errol in everything that he did. Why would you? Who would do that? I mean, so I sent this to the children. So, and I see she still goes on it. She's done it again now, a week or two ago in Dubai, telling this Anas Bakash or something, that how she was abused as a wife, and how she feels for all the abused housewives. I mean, it's just crap. I don't know, there's something wrong there.
Yeah, and I always feel sorry for anybody going through all sorts of divorces are always ugly and people throw rubbish at each other. When they do it so publicly and it gets regurgitated by the press without questioning it, that causes even more damage, doesn't it?
Well, people ask me how was my marriage to May? I say 10 out of 10. She was 10 out of 10, good wife. Yeah. From the beginning. My second marriage, how was Sarah? 10 out of 10, good, great wife. You get tired of each other. I'm afraid to say, in life, it's hard. I admire people who stay together for a very long time. But generally speaking, people change, and so, anyway, that's what I have to say about them. I have no, axe to grind with them.
Well, no, and we've spoken quite extensively about the different relationships and all the things and so on and so forth. And you've always been very positive and always said very positive things. And just to deal, because they keep regurgitating this, a lot of people say you're estranged from Elon. You don't speak to him anymore. What's the truth?
No. They say I'm estranged from my sons. I'm not. I mean, Kimmel and I bumped into each other in Abu Dhabi 4 weeks ago.
I know. I saw the picture. It was great.
Yeah. And Kimmel, when I left, Kimmel had tears in his eyes. Shame. He's very emotional. Put his arms around me in front of everybody. All this. We were like the center of the crowd, actually. There were 200 people for lunch.
Yes.
And the sheikh was incredibly supportive. And he threw the lunch, the sheikh of Abu Dhabi. And Kimmel put his arms around me and said, Dad, I love you. So where's the estrangement? I said, I love you too. And we want, and we had to separate because he was going somewhere else and I was on my way to see the King of Morocco. Can you believe it?
Yes.
And I had to get my bowing practices done, in shape. Anyway, so, and then Elon invited me to the launch of a Starship about 12 months ago when we were near each other, when it was possible for me to go in Texas. And I went there, we spent the weekend together. We had a great time. And I also mentioned to people that at this party, he stopped after the party. I mean, the after party, after the launch, which was a very successful launch.
Yes.
He stopped the proceedings, a couple of 250 people there, Hawaiian party, stopped the music, and he said, everyone, this is my dad. He taught me everything I know about engineering,
right? Which
is what he said. Yeah. So then I said to the crowd, no, he taught himself a lot, as well. But anyway, that was Elon. So no, in recent months, they were talking about getting me a Tesla, and I didn't see the point of a Tesla here. There are no charging stations.
Right.
I love Tesla, of course, but I mean, it's horses for courses, and this is not a place for electric car right now. We're still way behind.
Yeah.
So I said, I want a nice car. So he said, well, what do you want? I said, well, I like a Bentley.
No, I remember I spoke to you after you'd just taken deliveries.
So the next thing I got a Bentley.
Yeah, those are not the signs of somebody who is estranged. I mean, in a nutshell, then, how would you describe your relationship with Elon at the moment?
Very good. I mean, it's as good as I want it to be. As a father, especially if you have very outspoken, well-known sons, which I think of, I look at you, for example. You wouldn't want your father wouldn't want to be poking his nose in behind you all the time, with the idea that he's going to straighten people out about you. Like moms do when you say to a little boy, "What's your name?" and before he can answer, the mother says, "His name's Brian." I say to the woman, I was actually asking him what his name was, lady, not you. That parent thing is a problem. So you don't want to, and especially if if your sons are known people, and you don't want to bring, I mean, you only have to see how kids are when you arrive at school, and you say, "I'll pick you up at school," or something, or they say, "What car are you coming in?" Don't come in a truck.
Exactly. Park round the corner. Well, no, and you and I have spoken about this beforehand. I mean, we speak a lot about Elon and Kimball and your relationship with them. Do they mind?
No. Why?
Yeah.
No, they don't like me to talk about the May's parents' ideologies and stuff, because honestly, it's not nice.
Yeah.
And so I try to avoid it. But other people brought it up, not me. I didn't know a lot of the stuff I didn't know until I started reading in books and talking about the Technocrat Party. I never heard of it.
Yeah,
in Canada,
and it's so important. So Chris McGreal, that's the name of the journalist for The Guardian who's just written this article. I will tag him on this video so he can hear the truth, and I think it's so important. Yeah, finally, did he reach out to you? Did he say? Did he try to get hold of you to ask your side of it?
No, who?
Well, Chris McGreal, that's the name of the journalist from The Guardian. I will tag him because the important thing is to set the record straight. Errol, it's such a joy to have you on the show again. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for correcting that misinformation.
Okay.